Hello, and welcome to today's teaching. We hope it's a blessing for you. Here is Pastor Joe.
Well, welcome back. I trust you're having a good day in Jesus. Today we're continuing our teaching on rejection. Today we're going to look at individual rejection. We want to start breaking this down into a way we can work with it, look at it, and study it to where we can walk free from it. And so today we're looking at individual rejection. And I want us to look at a definition, or as we talked about earlier, we talked about how rejection affects us. And so we want to look at that now. One of the ways that rejection destabilizes our need to belong. We all have fundamental need to belong to a group, and when we get rejected, this need becomes destabilized, and the disconnection we feel adds to our emotional pain. Reconnecting with those who love us or reaching out to members of groups to which we feel strong affinity and who value and accept us has been found to soothe emotional pain after rejection. Feeling alone and disconnected after rejection, however, has often overlooked the impact on our behavior. And that's why we're going to look at the fact, church, that rejection actually has an effect on our behavior. We talked about that. We talked about how we respond to things, how we react to things rather than to respond. But I want you to listen to this again. It says here that when we get rejected, this need becomes destabilizing, and the disconnection we feel adds to our emotional pain. So you see, when we get rejected, it destabilizes our need to belong. And in 2 Samuel 14:28, it talks about Absalom. And it says that when the story is about Absalom and how that his sister was raped by his stepbrother. And so he in turn waited 2 years for his father David, who was a great man of God. But church, he was as you look at the scriptures, he was not a very good father. He was not a very good disciplinarian. He didn't bring correction when he should have, and things he should have done, he let get out of hand. And it cost him. It cost him but dearly. And so here today, there's a story about Absalom. And Absalom's sister was raped by her stepbrother. And David did nothing about it, even though he knew about it. He didn't do anything. And so she went to her brother Absalom. Why did she go to her dad, David, and tell him, my brother has raped me? But no, she didn't. Why? Because David wasn't going to do anything. And he didn't do anything. And Absalom waited 2 years for him to do something. And he never did a thing. So Absalom wrongfully took matters in his own hand and killed his brother. Okay? And then Absalom comes, and then David and Absalom leaves, and he's gone. And so then David finally asks him to come back, and he does, and that's where we are in the story. And it says here that and Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. Now, think about that. You see that Absalom, David's son, was asked to come back by the king, but he went 2 years without being seen. You see, that's the thing about rejection. And I want to share this with you from the book here. It says that rejection, the person who has experienced rejection gets the feeling, which he may or not be able to express, that he is unwanted. If he feels unwanted, then he naturally feels worthless or unnecessary. If he feels unworthy of his parents' love, he also feels inferior. If he feels unworthy and inferior, he must be a burden to his parents and hence must be a cause of many of their problems. You see, that's the problem with rejection, is that there's that feeling that you're the problem. And here's the thing with Absalom. Absalom felt like, well, I must be a problem here because I was asked to come back, and yet he don't want anything to do with me. It's not like he was asked to come back and, 48 hours passed before he said, I want to see you. No, 2 full years passed before he wanted to see the king. The king wanted to see him. I mean, surely he had time for his son. He didn't have to wait. He wasn't that busy. It took him 2 years. And even at this, David had to be made, in a sense, to see his son. So you see, that's an example of rejection, individual rejection. Here he was rejected by his father. Now, there's 2 types of rejection, and I want us to look at that because both of them are very, what's the word here? Applicable for what we're talking about. The first one is, and we've talked about this before in other teachings, but the first one is overt rejection. And overt rejection is defined as an open or obvious behavior which conveys the message that a child that he is unwanted or unloved. And then the other one is covert rejection, takes place in a subtle ways which many times are not intended by the parent. Now, overt rejection is just simply that you are openly or obviously behavior that conveys that you don't like this person, or you're not liked. Things coming towards you that shows you're not liked. Now, in my case, as I've shared before, growing up, I didn't feel like that I was wanted, I was loved. I didn't feel like. Now I look back now and realize that I was, but going through it as a child, I didn't think I was. One of the things that happened was stuff would happen with my stuff. What I mean by my things that belonged to me would either be stolen or destroyed, or something would happen to it, and yet my parents did nothing to rectify the situation or try to find out what had happened. I've told you this story before, but I'll tell it again. I had a song that I like to listen to, and I had it on the little Victrola. Some of y'all have no idea what that is, but little turntable, and I was listening to it. And my dad, his brothers came over to the house, and I was listening to that song, and I really loved that song. And about the 3rd time I listened to it, one of my uncles walked over started looking through the records at what we had, and he literally took my record off the turntable and broke it. So I'm sick of hearing that, and broke it. And I think it was my mom, said, that's the boy's song. And he said, I don't care, I'm sick of hearing it. But the thing was, nothing was done. There was no rectifying what had happened. There was no restitution given toward me. I started crying because that was my favorite song, and he just broke it. There was no restitution. No, hey, okay, here, I'm sorry. I'll give you, whatever, so you can go buy another one, something like that. Nothing like that. He just literally broke my song. My dad didn't do anything about it. I don't know whether he knew it or not. It doesn't matter. He didn't do anything about it. And that's just one of many instances in my life where stuff that belonged to me was destroyed and nothing was ever done. So what happens is, as an individual, you grow up with with a feeling of overt rejection. Obviously, they don't love that. They don't care about me. If they cared about me, they'd care about my stuff. And they don't care about my stuff because they allow my stuff to be destroyed. So they don't care about me. See, that's overt right there. That's the message that comes across. Now, obviously, there's more than just that. That straight up telling your child, you're never going to amount to nothing. You're an idiot. You're a moron. You're never going to go to be anything. Well, that right there is overt rejection. And other things that just obviously you're doing things that cause the child to know that you don't care about them, you don't love them, you don't have anything to do with them. See, that's overt rejection. And so we're talking about, again, on the individual level. And then we get to covert. And covert is really interesting from the standpoint it's not open, but it is open to see, but it's not from the standpoint you're trying to do something against the child. Actually, it's covert is more of a overprotection or overemphasizing or overdoing. Kind of like would be if say a child is born to a couple that there's a saying that we would say it was an uh-oh baby, which means that the youngest child is like 8 to 10 years older than this baby. This baby just born is 10 years younger than its closest sibling, or maybe even further than that. It wasn't intended, it wasn't expected, but here it is. And so the parents get overly protected of the child. They do this, they do that. They're always looking after it, taking care of it, all this kind of stuff because of the fact that it wasn't expected. Here it is, and we will take care of this. And so it's a whole different animal. Now this child can't, grows up without his feelings of that I'm not a person. I mean, who am I? I mean, I can't speak for myself. I can't talk for myself. I can't do this. I can't do that because it was all done for me as I was growing up. So see, that's the form of covert rejection. Even though the parents aren't rejecting the child, the reality is the child grows up thinking they're rejected because they don't know who they are. I never learned who I was. Never learned how to do that. Never had a relationship here with this person. I never had nothing because it just never happened because I was always kept from those things. So that's a form of covert rejection. Let me read to you again from the from Samuel. And this is about David again. And we've been talking about David, and I'm not getting down David. I love David. I think David's awesome. He has some flaws like all of us. And that's the beauty of the scriptures, is that they will tell the flaws in anybody. God the Father is great in the fact that there's no skeletons in the closet when it comes to God's people. God opens that closet up and says, look, get in here and look. And that should be encouraging to us because it lets us know that he's not, he is no favor, he doesn't favor anybody. You got a problem? I'll take care of you. So here we are, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 28. And again, the New King James Version. Here's what it says. Now, Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard that when David spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. Now, here's such a story here. David has been with his daddy, and his dad said for him to take some food to his brothers who were fighting against the Philistines. So when he shows up, there's no battle going on. There's two armies, one on one side of the valley, one on the other side of the valley. And they're not fighting because there's a big guy called Goliath who comes out every day and says, send somebody out here to fight me. That way, we get this over with really quick. And so David shows up and he sees all this stuff and he hears all this stuff. And so he starts talking about what's going on here. Why ain't we out there fighting? And so that's why his brother says that. His brother goes on to say, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and insolence of your heart, for you have come down here to see battle. You see, here's a story of David. Here's a story where he was rejected from his youth. I mean, you think about it. I say from his youth, but it's an individual rejection. He just straight up said, look, here's the problem. You're out here trying to cause a problem. You see, David was rejected by his own brother. And all David was doing was saying, well, why aren't we doing something? Why are we standing around here letting this happen? You see, that's right. That's overt rejection because he's saying, why aren't you back with those little old sheep? Why aren't you? I know your heart. You see, that there's a past statement. He's saying something from David's past that his brother is judging him about. You see, again, that's rejection. He's rejecting his own sibling. And we get that. You get it from parents. Overt or covert rejection comes from parents, comes from siblings, comes from friends, can come from a mate. I mean, so we have to understand that individual rejection can come in many different ways. And here we see it's coming from a sibling. And even though David's been sent here by his dad, doesn't matter. Hallelujah. Doesn't matter because his brother is already talking about his past. I know how your heart is. I know what you're all about. And none of that was true, you see. And that's the problem with when people judge you or reject you, church, is because they may not know your heart. Most cases, they don't know your heart. If they did, they wouldn't say the things they did. They wouldn't act towards you the way they act. So it's important to understand that, church, that a lot of times, as we talked about earlier, I talked about yesterday, we don't want to blame ourselves, which is the first thing we usually do when we get rejected. we need to look at the whole situation and realize, wait a minute, this is not me that's being rejected, it's what I did is being rejected. Or it could be me, they're rejecting me, they don't want to be around me. That's okay. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to allow this to affect me. No, I'm going to take it and give it to Jesus. Hallelujah. And let him handle it. Hallelujah. Because I'm not designed to handle rejection. We talked about that earlier. Because it destabilizes me, gets me, I lose my emotional stability. And the main thing it does, it robs you of your peace. The fruit of the Spirit, it robs you of your peace when you feel that. So it's important to understand that we've been given His peace by God so that we don't have to do that. The minute you feel your peace being affected, you need to stop right there and say, hold it, okay, I feel something going on here. I feel like I'm losing my peace. I'm not going to do this. No, that's not going to happen. Hallelujah. Well, I trust you've enjoyed the teaching today. If you had, then like, share, and subscribe. And you know the drill, as it were. Also, there's videos on the screen now, and I make them available to you. Hope you enjoy looking at those. Maybe there's something there that'll draw your attention and it'll be a blessing to you. And until next time, always remember, God's grace is greater than your sin. Be blessed.